And thank you once again, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you are making the most of the ideas and insights that are being discussed in our sessions. And with this panel, it's a huge panel, but I'm sure a lot of insights are going to emerge out of all the industry expertise and the experience of all the data practitioners that I have on this panel. So it's amply clear that data and AI are the best of allies. Data helps fuel AI, and AI unlocks the value of data. And when it comes to doing that, it's important that you have a modern data strategy. Now, when it comes to developing a modern data strategy, organizations know what it will be if they are able to do it right, but do they really know how to get it right? That's something we'll try and unpack with our panelists today. And I'd like to start off first with Soumen. Soumen, you're from the Hindustan Coca-Cola Beverages. You have a lot of legacy in your system, and the organizations typically have not been very data-driven from the start, but now, because this has become the battle cry for most organizations, how are you trying to build in a culture of data literacy right from the front line to the back office to the executive management, because data culture is very critical to moving the needle on something as ambitious as AI. So how are you trying to achieve this within your organization? 2 or 3 quick best practices that you've been able to develop.
See, I think data is very important for every organization, as you told it correctly. So what is actually happening that all the decision-making process, all the activities, whatever currently everybody is doing on the basis of data. And whether it is front line and back line, the same things happening. The one thing probably I would like to mention that data completeness is a problem for most of the organization, and as we go on the completion of the data, people are stop having the gut feeling and they start adopting the data. So that's the only thing that everybody is today working on that.
Right. Now, Narendra, when organizations are striving to become AI-driven, data quality is one of the issues that they deal with when it comes to handing the trusted data in the hands of the right stakeholders. So how do you see that as a key challenge in building up and developing AI implementations? How are you working around it in the pharma sector?
Hi, good morning, everyone. Yeah, pleasure to be here. I think on the data quality part, what we have seen over the last 15 to 20 years, we had a lot of data that was largely for the decision making, which is for a particular transactional decision making only. But when we use the historical data to make the decision making, the quality becomes actually very, very important, because then we base our decision based on what different events or what different triggers have happened over a period of time. So I think that's where it becomes very, very important to have the right data quality, and data governance practices become very important as well. I've seen challenges even in the master data management across organization, and it is not limited to pharma. I think it is across the industry. Largely the industries which are in the core businesses, the data governance has been a challenge across master data management, data quality management, and also how we drive the analytics out of that one. So things are improving, I would say, as we move along. And the most important part that we need to go back with our business stakeholders is to bring literacy about the data. If they have to go with the decisions based on the data set that they have, it's very, very important they understand that garbage in and garbage out. And we can't just say it by plain English. We have to put it in terms of real example. We have to feed the data. We have to tell them how this changes the perspective, how the right data set can actually bring in the right median than what we used to have earlier. So those are the things. I think seeing is believing. It's very important for our business and functional stakeholder also to understand what data quality means, and they need to take measures, because the data quality is largely dependent on the business domain, because they are the one who are the right owner of the data, and they have to govern how the data is coming in and what is the data quality. So that'll be it. I'll speak later.
Right. Vinod, there was a recent research by MIT Technology Review, and the report is called the CIO Vision 2025, which mentioned that data mismanagement is one of the critical reasons for the failure of data projects. How do you see this in the context of a bank or in the context of a BFSI sector? Because they've traditionally accumulated a lot of data. Banking and insurance are traditionally the data-driven businesses. They have a lot of legacy. How do you make sure that you get data management right so that that doesn't become a hurdle in the modernization of your data strategy?
Sure. See, basically, in my view, right, I mean, as you rightly pointed out, probably the banking industry were one of the first users of data science and data towards, meeting some of its core objectives. So there is definitely an ocean of data, or should I say, each of the systems, the loan origination system, the core banking system, the collection system, so each of them will have oceans and oceans of data. Today, we've reached a stage where the computing capability has enhanced so much that you can actually integrate the entire set of oceans to deliver a particular solution. Now, we're going to start off with the data integration objective. I'm sure that we're going to get lost in the ocean. So therefore, maybe one way to handle this is to actually sit down and think about the core use cases which we would like to implement in a bank. I mean, would you want to have a differentiated collection strategy which can kind of automate your entire allocation or the right collection action kind of a system? And then think about where are these data points lying, and try to integrate just those for the purpose of that project. Now, similarly, you may come up with another project which is, let's say, budgeting. Right, or the capital allocation, which line of product needs what kind of capital allocation. So again, there we look at this as a project on a standalone basis and try to dip into the different data points which is going to help us in succeeding in this particular project. Now this, of course, I mean, when I'm saying this, I'm not saying that this is the only way we should go about integration, because obviously when I'm talking, I gave an example of a collection project, right? But that's just an example. I mean, I'm talking of a conglomeration of the projects and trying to use those kind of, pool of data which is required for the conglomeration of the projects and integrate only all of them. If we're going to start with 100% integration across all systems, right? I don't think we'll be able to start off with any project.
Absolutely. Now, Sandeep, you represent the edtech industry. When we talk about an AI-driven, data-centric company, it's very important for an organization to be able to build and maintain a team of data scientists. How do you think organizations should go about building and maintaining and assembling a team of top-notch data scientists, and what should they be doing to make sure that they are successful?
Yeah. Good morning, everyone. So I think I can probably give you more of a startup point of view. I think even before data science comes into play, you would ideally want to have a robust data platform in place. Make sure that all the data that's coming across from various sources are dumped into a single warehouse. Then subsequently, you will look for data analysts who are kind of finding those key vitals to business, right? I think coming from education, learning outcome is such a key vital for us, experience, and then comes the data science part, where you look for automating this, kind of leveraging whatever data you have to build the AI solutions. So I think coming to making things successful, I would say the key part here is result-oriented R&D. As in, I think R&D can go on for years and years, but as long as it's not in production, it's not useful. So how do you make sure that you kind of chunk your problem into small parts, try to solve the low-hanging fruits, get the confidence of stakeholders, so that you can actually work on building something great. So I think it's been close to 2 years. We launched a product called Smart Doubt Engine, which does real-time doubt solving. I think when we started, we kind of reduced the funnel by 9%. And today we are standing at 45%. And I think within the next couple of months, we'll be having close to 85% doubts that are solved in real time. So I think that's one approach which has worked with us. And then the other thing is, I think collaboration plays a very important role. As I mentioned, you have these tightly coupled teams: data engineer, data scientist, data analyst. So as long as they don't work together, I don't think the solutions will go into production. And yeah, I think a continuous learning needs to happen. I think the space is evolving pretty fast. And there is one or the other research that is coming up every week. So I think very important to keep up the pace. So yeah.
Absolutely. Now, Syed, I'd like to understand from you as an e-commerce company, you need to make sure that while innovation is your battle cry, but you also need to make sure that the customer experience is never compromised, because the expectation from e-commerce companies is of a user-friendly interface and also a customer experience that is very fast. So how do you see this when we talk about data as the oil, then cloud becomes the pipeline and AI becomes the refinery? Then how do you think organizations should be adopting a three-pronged approach to data analytics, and how are you doing this at Nykaa?
Thanks, Sneha. Hi, everyone. So, again, I think this statement, data is the new oil, has been sort of discussed and debated by hundreds of people. I'll just give you my take on it. Data was always there. It's only the last few years that we have been able to process and make sense of multimodal data. Like when a customer comes in, whether it's a store, whether it's an online store, now you have a lot more ways of stitching that customer's data, understanding that customer more, which always used to be there, but today compute and storage solutions make it possible. So that's, and you have plethora of data. Customer comes to you, they engage with different stuff, whether it's online, I mean, they browse different products, they search for certain things, they purchase products, then they could talk to customer service, they could write reviews, they could do all of this is different forms of engagement, and everything is telling something about the customer. That's why data is so important, because the more we know about the customer, the better we can sort of engage with them and we improve their experience. At the end of the day, what does a customer want when they come to an app? They want to have a seamless experience, search or get what they want easily, buy it at value, and get it delivered without any problems on time. That's what the premise is. Availability of selection, ease of browse, purchase at value, and then efficient delivery. That's what it is, and data enables us to understand that about. Why cloud is important. A lot of times, as technologies change, we need to experiment the benefit of adapting any technology or any tool. Now, I remember the days when I used to be in banks 10 years back. Everything that you wanted to test out, you needed to build it on-prem, which means you have to spend a lot of money building a storage structure, building a data pipeline, building an ML workbench. You needed to invest $5 million, and maybe the use case is not, and then now you have pressure to deliver ROI. Today, what happens is with cloud solutions, and we have a plethora of them, you can get all of these things on rent. And so you experiment fast. The initial outlay is low, so you have multiple experiments running, and maybe out of the 10, see, we are scientists, which means by design, if 8 experiments of ours are succeeding, we are probably being very conservative in choosing experiments. Ideally, 5 or 6 of them should fail. That is when you're really touching the limits of innovation, but it's only possible because of cloud. Now, so you have data, you have cloud. How do you use AI to make customer experience better? As I said, I mean, I'll take the example of how a customer comes in, they type blue collar polo neck t-shirt. Now, Nykaa would have 5,000 of these t-shirts. How does it understand what I do? So Nykaa knows I am from Bangalore, probably affluent male. So that tells them one cohort of my preference. Then it knows from my past history which brands I like. So I like Tommy, I like CK. So there is a brand preference or affinity. It knows my price points. These are, I mean, so this is all offline data which is already preloaded in my search. It also knows I searched the same shirt last 2 days back or maybe 30 minutes back, and I did not like this shirt. So what is the point of showing it again? This is where real-time abilities
Context-aware
come into
recommendations.
and that's how you sort of put it. So ability to have customer inputs, but also ability to seamlessly and in real time instrument these is what makes a customer experience very, very powerful. You might have all the data, but there are sites which take 10 seconds to open. You've lost the customer. So that's how I look at these things. Thanks.
I'd like to take that thread to Chandan. Chandan, tech executives often see multi-cloud and open standards as key to AI deployment because they like the flexibility that multi-cloud provides, and the open architecture standards support the multi-cloud in terms of fueling the AI adoptions. How do you see this approach, and what are your observations on this front, and how are you leveraging it within organization?
Thanks, Sneha. Hi, everyone. I think multi-cloud strategy is something which offers flexibility at the very first core to all the users, because they have an option to choose to go to A cloud or a B cloud or C cloud, depending on what the needs might be. Now, if you're looking for doing an AI kind of a solution, maybe you need more GPU power. A cloud might be offering better GPU offerings at a lower cost. Therefore, it gives you opportunity to go and pick up that cloud provider. If you're looking at pure analytics, if you're looking at data lake kind of a play, some cloud provider might be providing compute or storage at a much cheaper cost. Therefore, it gives an opportunity for us to go and leverage the multitude of providers and select them as per what the solution needs are. When I say that, it also brings in an additional challenge of, first is data governance, because now you have magnitude of platforms. You have to implement security, you have to implement privacy, you have to implement controls, checks and balances. What it increases is, it increases your operations cost, because now your teams have to manage multitude of these the cloud service offerings. It also leverages your power to go and talk to a cloud provider on the scale of economies. Now, because you're distributing your spend across multiple cloud providers, your spend might be more. What also offers you in this space, though, is because you're not locking into one cloud provider, you are not spending money upfront. Because most of the time, cloud providers, when they say, okay, if you're booking our service upfront for 3 years, I'll pay you, I'll offer you lesser price, but you get the commodity you have to pay upfront. Having said that, I think it still offers you a better option in leveraging multitude of cloud providers, depending on what the solution needs. And in addition to that, I think the open architecture helps you more, because when you leverage open architecture to develop your solutions, you can try to build in interoperability between cloud by design. So once you're starting your initiatives, I think in the design phases itself, if we embed the open architectures, the frameworks which can be transformed across cloud providers, then a multitude or a multiple cloud provider strategy will be more successful. Thank you.
How do you see it helping organizations advance their analytics journey, if you could?
Okay. I think, if I repeat the question, you want to know how do they advance the analytics capability?
How does open architecture standards and multi-cloud help organizations advance their analytics journey?
Sure. So if you look at open architectures across AI also, there are different frameworks which can be leveraged across different platforms. It can be leveraged in Amazon Cloud, it can be leveraged in Google Cloud, it can be leveraged on, and basically, let's say, in Oracle or anywhere else. Now, when we are building solutions, I think in AI, what is really important is getting the value out. And how do you get the value out is getting a solution which is workable. In the initial phase, in the proof of concept phase, if you're able to bring a value out first by leveraging the least amount of cost spent and bringing a solution which is scalable, then I think it's important to see if it's working, how do we scale it faster? And then taking a cloud provider where your cost will be lowest for that solution and analytics improvements can be made. So your let's say, development or your proof of concept platform could be such where you don't need to real-time compute power, you don't need results in 5 seconds or milliseconds, but something which is giving you accurate results. Once that solution has proven right, I think you need to move it and scale it to a platform where we can bring it in a way where it runs fast, where it runs agile, where it can scale faster and gives you flexibility. And I think that's how analytics can be greatly, greatly improved by leveraging AI and different cloud providers.
Thanks. Now, Bhanu, I'd like to understand from you at PingSafe, the company behind TIDB, how do you help with the database modernization, and how do you foresee technologies like AI helping with the innovation of the underlying database layer?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Pleasure to be here. So yeah, I think my context would be always from the database standpoint while we are discussing about front-end applications and the challenges we are experiencing. Database modernization term is not new, of course. It's been, ever going since last n number of years, but it is picking up more importance now, and the key reason is that the patterns of applications, the demands of applications, the throughput, demands of running multiple applications, high concurrency, kind of calls for immediate actions. And the challenge now is that, with our experience, we've seen that many organizations are still hooked up to traditional data platforms, right? And these are generally platforms which are built on a single node kind of an architecture, which are not designed for basically, scalability, is not designed for high availability, and so on and so forth. So when we really talk about database modernization, we're talking about few key things, right? The first one, of course, is scalability. We've seen, applications, for example, e-commerce, logistics, we go online and do shopping, right? Buyers like me, there'll be hundreds of them, thousands of them, right? And we see in certain applications, we experience about 1 billion transactions happening a day, right? And at the same time, your underlying data volume is increasing, anywhere from 500 GB to, all the way up to 500 terabytes. And this was not probably the case, if you kind of flash back 20 years ago. And hence, your database modernization decisions have to be based on, platforms which provide you, of course, high availability, provides you scalability so that you can continue to scale your database, along with your business so that you never get limited with the underlying tech. And I think another common scenario which we have experienced these days is the need for running real-time analytics. We've seen so many use cases nowadays. A very simple example could be, let's talk about SaaS. Any SaaS companies would always have a dashboard, which is used by their tenants. And if there is a dashboard, that means there has to be an analytical query running somewhere at the back end, while SaaS companies also manage the transactional workloads, right? Or another key example could be, if someone plays a game and you see a leaderboard in real time and your name kind of, gives a rank while you finish the game, it's all analytics happening at the back end. So these scenarios are becoming quite popular these days and need for a lot of businesses. And I think that's where, since I represent PingCap and, the name of the DB is called TIDB, is trying to solve some of these challenges. And I think when it comes to AI, one thing is very, very common among all AI companies these days, and which is the use of vector database. And I think this vector term has been there for about 10 years, but I think the adoption has really, really escalated recently. With the simple example of ChatGPT, ChatGPT actually uses vectors underlying. And if you see ChatGPT 2 to where ChatGPT is now, which is ChatGPT 4, you would see the amount of data which is being stored on these vectors has hugely increased from anywhere from millions to billions of vectors being stored now. So vector becomes very essential for AI and supporting these GenAIs as well. And I'm sure there'll be other components, but I think vector usage is increasing as well. So I think a platform, to summarize, should be such which helps you to run your transactional workloads, which helps you to run your real-time analytics, and at the same time, which helps you to run such AI models using underlying vectors. And to the future of databases, right? While we are talking about future of AI in the application space, there is a future, there's a lot of work going on in the database space where we are leveraging AI, right? For example, imagine if you have a database tomorrow which can do a predictive scaling. Nowadays, you scale because you can anticipate a certain workload is going up, let's say in the festive period. But what if an AI can predict when do you expect more workload and can scale out your systems automatically? Or, for example, it can do some anomaly detection if it can detect, if there is an unauthorized access to your data. Or, for example, when on databases you create indexes, can the AI tell you automatically what indexes to create, right? So these are all some common patterns which we see in modernization, and I think some of it we are ourselves trying to implement into our DB, but I think going forward we would see this more common in the database space.
Right, thanks. Shalvi, now when you talk to your enterprise customers across industry verticals, what do you see and identify are the key foundational barriers when it comes to modernizing their data strategy? Where are they struggling? Can you talk about some of the pitfalls that they have encountered, and what are the best practices you would suggest and share with our audience?
Actually, that's quite a bit in terms of, because we work across enterprises in different industries. And I can tell you, most of the organizations start with a very bold agenda of really, I want to adopt AI, I want to be an AI-first company. And while banking has somehow progressed, pharma, they've been using AI in traditional ways. But the three things which I would say really come as a barrier. First and the foremost is most of them don't have a clear data strategy and data privacy governance framework. So it's almost like different divisions have created their own data lakes. I might call AI as artificial intelligence. Within my organization, someone else will call augmented, someone will call AI. So the data definition of those fields itself, the MDM piece, is really messed up. So when they want to really run AI, they don't know where to go for. So typically what happens, there'll be a leader who will start and come and say, let's run this program. I want AI all across. I want to develop 5 Gen AI use cases, drive 30%, 40% productivity, which is great. Then comes the part of how do we make it happen? And that's where the data becomes a big challenge because they don't have a clear data available. And that causes fatigue in the organization because people say, we started on the journey, it's been 6 months, 8 months, I'm not seeing any returns. And people start losing interest and those use cases are not able to scale and we don't see the ROIC. And the second piece which I see is adoption. So, there are customers who have really progressed on the journey and have said, let me just take an example of Gen AI. There's some customers of ours who've actually launched some co-pilots, very specific to their industry use cases in financial services. The problem is the user adoption. People who really have to use on a day-to-day basis almost feel like, why should I do it? It is a technical work. I'll have to go into, and typically there is a resistance in the larger organization because we haven't created data literacy for those people. So how do I use a prompt? How do I make it happen? So there is a barrier to adoption. So again, what happens is the ROIC doesn't come in and people start lagging behind. I think these are two big things that we are seeing. The third piece which people have started talking a lot more across is the piece around really the responsible AI. What they worry about is I'm getting data from outside, I have my internal data, while I've secured it, what if the results that come from models are not right? What if what I'm getting has bias in it? What if it's unfair? And those are some of the questions which are really bothering them to solve for it. So I think those are the three big things which we are seeing as a barrier and questions which most of the organizations are trying to solve for.
Absolutely. I'd like to take that thread. Thanks for that comprehensive view. I'd like to take that thread to Sandeep. Sandeep, when it comes to modernizing your data strategy and preparing it for AI deployments, what are the kind of change in mindset, attitude, and skill set is required for an organization to create that fertile ground for data and AI-related projects? What do you think they should be doing to ensure that they have a long-term commitment to this? Because the returns could be elusive.
So I think, again, there are 2 points of views here. One is from the organization point of view. I think they need to look at it as more of an investment rather than a cost center, right? I think initially you wouldn't be able to get results. You need to make sure that you kind of gauge your performance based on experiments. I think Syed has mentioned it. The number of experiments is the key. So giving that confidence and the room to innovation is definitely needed. And I think, and the second part is the risk-taking capability, I would say. I can understand from the governance point of view of banks, but let's say I have a student who is kind of asking me a query, and I go wrong, it's okay, as long as I can explicitly mention that there are instances that can go wrong. And I think, in fact, we saw that in one of our product, the retention of students who are actually downvoting some of our responses is even higher than students who are upvoting. So I think ChatGPT has made sure that responses will go wrong and people are fine with it. So I think that risk-taking capability is definitely needed. And from I think developer point of view, I think now is the best time to actually build applications in production. I would say ki there are there used to be a trust factor that you need to first buy in from different stakeholders, mostly non-technical, 5 years back. But now with, again, ChatGPT and the kind of accessibility that it has given, everyone knows that, yeah, it does most of the work. So now, how can you make sure that you supercharge it by probably leveraging your data, which is the moat in your case, building those RAG applications that leverage vector databases, fine-tuning models using your data. I think that is how I see things going forward. And yeah, I think this is the best time.
Soumen, what are some of the key value additions you think modern data platforms can bring for organizations as they try to modernize their data strategy?
I think one major value addition would be the integration and harmonization, because these are the 2 points which I think everyone is struggling, and as my experience goes on, is still there. And there are so many legacy systems that exist, and we are still introducing new systems. But probably the platform point of view, as we are envisage the uses of cloud infrastructure and one lake and lake house, probably this is going to solve very soon. But there's a basic challenges of the legacy system that will take some time. But I think this platform will solve most of the problem, and then people will start using it after this harmonization.
Now, sir, I want to understand from you, Vinod, sir, you're in the business of banking. Banking is all about trust, especially at South Indian Bank. You talk about trust quite a lot in your tagline. So when we're talking about data and AI, it's very important to establish a trusted governance framework, and that's what even Shalvi was highlighting. So how do you think organizations should go about doing it, and what are the kind of ways in it it'll help improve the data maturity of companies?
Sure, and I think, again, for the banking industry, probably this is something that we are absolutely wary about. And even when you talk of South Indian Bank, our tagline is trust and technology. So which means trust is the foundation and the basis of everything. See, I think the first thing is, you'll have to follow, even though, it's a cliche, but still, I don't mind repeating it, you'll have to follow the letter and spirit of the trust, right? What is the letter? The letter is, I think there are very clear guidelines from the regulator, which tells about how much of data you can share, what kind of data you can share, how much of data you can actually get about the customer from outside sources, what kind of data you can actually get out of that. And these are audited and inspected frequently and also pretty rigorously. And any deviation from this is an absolute no-no. I think there are some very strict penalties from the regulator, and I don't think banks really, play around the interpretation there much. The second is about the spirit. The spirit is, I think we all know, what kind of data we actually have about the particular customer. And the banking industry is pretty mature now, and therefore everybody has got a great sense of what is really doable, what really is not doable at all, and what will happen if we become a bit adventurous, right? In the long term, it's going to be disastrous for the bank. The customers are going to go away. The reputation is going to, go and take a beating. So, and I think where probably the banking industry can mature is on the customer delivery side, right? There's always a talk about N is equal to 1. hyper-personalization, coming up with the best product for the customer, so on and so forth. I think a similar kind of, analytics will need to go into the customer preference as far as data sharing is concerned, right? See, some customers, and I mean, I'm not really, just saying this for the sake of argument, but it is true that some customers, and I think, there's a point which my friend had also mentioned about customers getting irritated if the same product which he or she has rejected is brought up again. So similarly, in the banking industry also, certain customers don't want to be pitched the same product, right? Now, if you need to go to that extent, then there is some level of data which we need to store about the customer, which we need to collect about the customer, which will only make that banking service become customizable for him or her. And some customers don't really mind going to that level of data sharing. On the other hand, there are some customers who really don't want this level of customization. They are happy with the plain vanilla products, but they kind of guard the data. They want the bank to guard the data very closely. I think that kind of differentiation is something that all banks, the banking system needs to develop. And so that the data privacy can also be implemented at n is equal to 1.
Absolutely. Now, I'd like to take this to Shalvi now. Shalvi, what are the 4 key elements when it comes to risks associated with data and AI that organizations should watch out for? What have been your experiences with customers and what are your suggestions to them?
I think just adding on to what I said earlier, I think the 4 key risks, obviously most of the organizations don't have a clear AI strategy and an AI governance. Typically, each of the units could decide what are the cases they want to pick, how do you go about it. If you think of an organization when it comes to growth strategy, which geographies do I go to, what products do I sell, they have a very clear laid out strategy. I think having a clear AI strategy is really, really key to know which use cases, when to pick, how to pick, what is the readiness, what is required behind. And that requires bringing together the business and the tech teams together. And it also requires some of the legal compliance, ethics people. But that's a very new function which is developing, especially with AI as you bring external data. How do you bring ethics into it to be fair? So I think the first piece is around really having that governance body as well as the AI strategy. So people know what to expect and how do I start seeing returns on the investments. I agree it should not be looked at, it should be looked as an investment, but ultimately every organization is going to look for returns. So I think that's the first piece I think which is very, very critical. The second piece I would say is, we've all talked about it. We've all said data is important. We all understand that there'll be structured, unstructured data, but who creates the data? Who's the owner for the data? Who has access to the data? Who defines what needs to be done? How are we really bringing in the different regulatory requirements? I think that framework I feel is very key for us to establish, and it has to be independent of the AI governance framework, but that's more about strategy growth, what we need to do. This is slightly different. And the third piece, I would say, is just learn from each other. What I see is organizations try to do the same things. We need to create networks of different groups, whether it's tech partners, whether it is regulatory bodies, industry bodies, or organizations from a different industry. I will tell you, I was in a forum almost 2 months back, and one of the pharma clients actually came and said, we are trying to do this, but the reason we want to talk to you and understand is because you do it for banking, which we feel is much evolved than us. But the banking industry could feel differently. But I think just creating those cross-links so people learn from each other and build on top of it versus everyone trying to invent. I think these are 3 things which I feel are very, very important, and obviously talent. That goes without saying. I don't have to say enough about it. I think this group knows and struggles, but those are the 4 things I would really call out that we should watch for and build on.
And when it comes to great data, then with data also comes the great responsibility of being able to manage and handle it better. So what are your suggestions around that, especially with DPDP Act? What are some of the things that organizations should watch out for in that area?
See, I think the data segregation, the data access, and the data status, those are 3 things where you have to build in. You just can't go without it. I think that's, to me, is the basic to start thinking about it. Right now, everyone talks about data democratization. Everyone should have data. It should be available to all. But what data to whom? Who's going to make sure that it doesn't float? So I think those guardrails of the framework of data, starting from data quality to data storage to data lineage, I think that has to be established. Without that, this will become a challenge, which will be very difficult to manage because you will see a lot of external data coming in as organizations try to evolve, or boundaries getting broken across functions. And if you don't lay this very clearly, pretty soon the result that will come in will have biases built into it.
Bhanu, when it comes to building the foundational practices for data, organizations often struggle to create AI at scale because they struggle to map the AI opportunities, identifying the right use cases, creating a strategy for sourcing the right data for AI. What are some of the challenges that organizations face there?
Sure. I think for any AI use case, I think we all would agree that, of course, the most important part is the underlying data. But I think it is the volume of data, right? I don't think so. If we run an AI model on a small set of data, your accuracy would be high, right? So which means that you need to run your AI use cases on a large set of data. Now, I think the biggest challenge, according to me and with my experience, is the data silos. You see that the data generation always happens from the front end, which is the applications, right? These applications are generating data, they're putting it in this, either into the traditional DBs, which of course have limitations to grow, right? And the moment the data volume starts to reach the boundary of these databases, we've seen that there are common practices to start archiving the data. Even when the archive data may be of some business value to the business, but they still have to archive the data because there's no other option, because otherwise it'll start impacting your applications and the performance overall, right? So I think this is the first challenge, that you are limiting your data. The second one is, if now you have to do analytics, because at the end of the day, whether we talk about analytics or we talk about AI, both are actually fall under the same category. It's end of the day, it's analytics. And if you have to do analytics, right now you will have to move your data from these front-end databases to analytical databases, something like Snowflake or something like Redshift and so on, right? And you are actually physically moving this data through a network to another database, which means you are losing the capability of running analytics in real time, like I was telling you last time, right? And I think finally, now as we were talking about vector, if we now have to run vector use cases, then you have to do the same process of moving data from either your front-end DBs to a vector and continue to build history so that you can run your AI use cases effectively. So I think these data silos where transactional data is separate, your analytical data is separate, your vector data is separate, would definitely create a lot of challenges and bottlenecks. And I believe if there is a platform, and I'm sure there are platforms now coming up which can cater to these different use cases on one single platform, simplify your operations, and at the same time let you run these AI models on your DB, I think that's what you would be looking for. And I think, again, the challenge at the front end is what we are trying to solve, right? Because there was no distributed data platforms available at the application DB level, which are now, of course, coming in, which are now getting more adopted. And because these are distributed, they have no more contention of storing data. They can just continue to scale and continue to load more and more data, and hence, and then run your models on this historical data, without any contentions.
Absolutely. Now, Syed, when it comes to AI, there is no AI without IA. So, AI requires ML requires analytics, and analytics requires the right data and information architecture. So, these three, these form the solid layers of the, AI ladder. So, how do you think organizations should go about adopting this, and what have you done at Nykaa to get this right?
So, let me take a banking example. Suppose you're sitting here and you get an SMS that your card has been swiped for $450 in some site in China. What do? You immediately call the bank. Now what happens? The bank starts at IVR. Banking the bane ke liye 1 press kare. If you have a credit card account, press 2. Then you press 2 and then says, to know your balance, press 1. You now know the drift. The customer is really upset, worried, tense about what's going to happen. There might be another transaction, but this information has not flown into all the pre-fed information. We know this customer is a gold customer, everything and all, and we are going to give them express treatment. But right now, 99% chance is that the customer is talking about this transaction. It's not flown. So all your AI, all your ML is gone for a toss because the customer is worried. And that is what we have to solve for, whether it is a bank, whether it's a pharma, whether it's an e-commerce. Let's take an example of an e-commerce and what we are doing. See, a lot of information and models are pre-fed. When a customer comes to a platform, you already know so much about the customer, you know the affluence, you know things, and based on that, you are customizing the experience. But a lot of information, just like the immediate transaction, is not pre-fed. The probability of me buying a charging adapter or a screen guard changes 20 times if I have a mobile in the cart. But if this information is not flowing to my ecosystems, I will continue to keep on showing something else. I mean, if somebody has a mobile phone in the cart, what else would he buy or she buy apart from a charger or things? Why are you showing grain seeds and conditioners and this when you know this is not the current shopping mission? But because our information architecture is not structured real time, those stale recommendations continue to happen. And no model recommends it, because if you see, if you take a big sample, still the customers are going to buy more shampoos than adapters. So it will say, no, my model is right. But for that customer, it is a pathetic experience. And that is what we have to keep ensuring. It is not about beating the odds. It is about making each consumer interaction, and that's all possible, not through complex models, but complex models aided by right information architecture, which makes the right information flow to the right decision model at the right time, not after 3 hours when the customer is already frustrated about, and maybe by that time there are 4 more fraud transactions that happened on the card. Now, what's the use of talking to the customer? Customer is already worried. So that is why and how I feel we should be working. We should focus on simpler solutions, but with the right real-time information architecture. That's my view.
Absolutely. Now, Chandan, when it comes to data architecture, organizations should design it in a way that they are able to leverage the emerging and future technologies like AI, IoT, blockchain. So what should organizations be doing to create that future-ready data architecture?
I mean, not one solution fits all. So there is no one answer which serves everybody that this is the architecture that you follow. One of the things that we can look into this whole data aspect is data is growing. So scalability is one aspect that needs to be looked into, that your architecture should be scalable, it should be agile, so that it can take on all the new data needs that are coming in. Cloud native technologies are next step in the direction of modern architecture, that instead of building too many distinct applications, how can we leverage cloud infrastructure and cloud native solutions through which we can make more scalable, make more, if I have to call, adaptable applications, systems. The other aspect that I would look at it is decentralized versus centralized. There's a big argument about, hey, we're an organization, we want to centralize everything. In the last few years, I've come across instances where we've started to understand that why do we need to centralize all the data? If the data is closer to where the decision makers are, and that data does not need to be everywhere in the organization, you don't really need large data lakes or delta lakes and bring everything into data warehouses. There can be smaller solutions which help people make decisions faster. So architecture needs to be more adaptable towards what the user is expecting, not what the IT tends to do. People think of all these modern architectures and we portray that we want to build grand systems. But in somewhere, I think one of the things which gets lost is, again, I'll hop into this part, with Vinod mentioned, trust. I think in data space, as the data is exploding, AI is coming into picture, the biggest aspect that comes into designing any architecture of a system is governance. How do you ensure your data is protected? We hear so much about data privacy, data loss, phishing attempts. We have seen ransomware implements happening across major IT organizations. So whenever we are building, at least in industrial organizations, we are looking to build systems around data governance as the first design element, that the customer data should not get lost. The PII for all our employees should not get lost. And I think that becomes like a core for what we are trying to build. So governance, number one, scalability, cloud native technologies, these are a couple of things. And of course, AI for AI is, which I would say is last. that how do you leverage AI to augment your systems so that they become more AI capable. That's how I would look at it as a modern architecture strategy.
Now, very quickly, we will move into the closing wrap-up round. Very quickly, all of you, 40 seconds by the watch. Just give me 1 or 2 line answers on when it comes to modernizing your data strategy and preparing it for AI, what are the success metrics to track? What are the business outcomes that should come to life with it? We'll start with you, Syed, very quickly, please.
So to me, customer is the center of everything. Build everything assuming you're going to benefit customers. As I explained in the examples, you have to put customer at the center of all your AI and data strategy. Is everything that you're doing, if it is going to improve customer experience? Because if customer experience, we have to build systems or companies to last, not to have one transaction. I mean, if the customer is happy, there is no reason why they will not. They will continue to come.
Right.
And
Customer experience is your take.
I think for me, it's a business impact, whether it is bottom line or top line. It has to create the impact, otherwise it cannot be sustained.
Vinod?
No, I totally agree with him. So return on investment, it's also critical. A return on investment, not just for the short term. So certain projects could be for a much longer term. It could be some infrastructure, development which is happening in the analytics and AI space, which is fair enough. But at least over a period of time, there has to be an impact assessment in terms of
Business impact and sustainability of innovation.
As the theme itself says, right? Data analytics plus AI is intelligence square. So I think in overall solution building aspects, we have to take care of how we are capturing the data, how we are gathering the data, what quality of data is there, and how do we embed AI from the very initial design thinking of an AI application that is being generated. And I think that's going to make your future-looking architectures more successful.
Right. Sandeep?
So I think it's such a generic question. I think, yeah, but I would say keep your accuracies intact. I think make sure that the solutions are cost effective. And yeah, I think we never know when AGI is gonna come and what it's gonna make. So let's be prepared and have that competitive edge.
I think almost everything is said, but I just want to add, I'll expand customer experience to user experience, not just customer, but your internal customers, external customers,
Data literacy throughout the organization.
Yeah. And I think the second thing I would add, like while I agree with everything, is simplicity. Let's not overcomplicate and invest and make things so complex that in the future we don't know what's going to happen and how do we manage scalability and adaptability.
Yeah, I think from a data platform standpoint, I think if you are making any decisions, make sure that it's a long-term support which a platform provides, which continues to be open, continues to be more flexible in terms of managing your workloads.
Thank you, Bhanu. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much to my panelists for keeping up with the time. We've actually did our bit to save some time. Thank you so much to all of you. Ladies and gentlemen, can we have a huge round of applause for our panelists? Thank you very much. Thank you.